Today, across Canada, a story is breaking that could touch the lives of millions of families, seniors, and working Canadians. A story that feels less like a line on a government website and more like a lifeline in the middle of a storm. After weeks of speculation, tense negotiations, and rising public frustration, a major update is finally here. Extra relief checks have reportedly been approved by the Canada Revenue Agency. And the big question everyone is asking right now is simple: who qualifies, when will the money flow, and how much difference will it really make? For months, Canadians have been caught in a tug-of-war between rising living costs and limited incomes. Inflation has eaten away at grocery budgets. Housing costs have reached levels many never imagined possible. Retirees who believed their pensions would carry them into a secure future have found themselves counting every dollar, while young families with children have struggled to balance rent, daycare fees, and the rising price of everyday essentials. In this tense climate, the CRA's relief program has become one of the most closely watched developments of the year. The journey to this announcement has been long and, for many, deeply personal. It began when advocacy groups sounded the alarm over the growing gap between stagnant incomes and skyrocketing expenses. Reports from across the country revealed alarming trends: seniors skipping meals to pay for heart medication, parents forced to choose between heating their homes and buying fresh produce, and students racking up debt just to stay afloat. The pressure on Ottawa was unrelenting, and voices demanding action grew louder with every passing week. Inside government circles, the debate was fierce. Some argued that additional relief would add too much strain to federal budgets already stretched thin. Others insisted that failing to act would leave vulnerable Canadians facing choices no citizen should have to make. Ultimately, the mounting urgency could not be ignored. According to newly surfaced details, the CRA has now approved what are being called extra relief checks, targeted at groups who need help the most. So what does this mean in practical terms? Early indications suggest that the payments are not a one-size-fits-all solution, but rather a carefully tiered system. Families earning under a certain threshold, reportedly around $48,000 annually, could see additional credits added directly to their accounts. Seniors relying primarily on old age security or the guaranteed income supplement are said to be among the first in line, with estimated payments ranging from a few $100s to potentially more than $1,000, depending on individual circumstances. For single parents, the amounts could be even higher, reflecting the reality that raising children in today's economy requires extraordinary sacrifice. For many Canadians, even a modest payment could mean the difference between hardship and relief. Consider the example of a retiree in Ontario who spends nearly $300 a month on life-saving prescriptions, leaving little room for rising utility bills. A one-time payment of $800 could cover several months of medication and provide a cushion against other expenses. Or take the case of a young couple in Alberta juggling rent of nearly $2,000 a month while supporting a toddler. An additional $1,200 in support might give them enough breathing room to stay current on bills and still put groceries on the table. But while supporters of the move are celebrating, critics are raising questions. Economists warn that temporary relief may not solve the underlying crisis. If inflation continues unchecked, they argue, these payments could vanish almost instantly into higher grocery bills or soaring rents. Others worry that the selection criteria may leave out Canadians who are just above the income thresholds but still struggling to keep their heads above water. There are also concerns about timelines. While the CRA has reportedly set in motion the payment system, it is not yet entirely clear how quickly money will reach bank accounts or whether all eligible groups will receive funds at the same time. Despite the criticism, the mood in many households tonight is cautiously optimistic. Relief checks, even if limited, are seen by many as a recognition that their struggles are real, and that Ottawa cannot ignore them. Community leaders are calling the move a step toward restoring dignity for those who feel abandoned by economic forces beyond their control. Advocacy groups are urging Canadians not just to accept the payments quietly, but to keep pressing for long-term reforms to pensions, social programs, and wage protections. One senior from Quebec, interviewed outside a local pharmacy, described the payments as a chance to breathe. She explained that with her fixed pension, every price increase feels like a punishment for simply getting older. If this relief comes through, she said, I'll finally be able to stop worrying every time I open my wallet. Across the country, similar sentiments are being echoed: gratitude, relief, but also skepticism about whether this marks the beginning of real change or just a temporary patch. Timelines circulating within financial circles suggest that the first wave of payments could be deposited within the next several weeks, with additional groups phased in gradually afterward. Exact dates remain unconfirmed, but the message from Ottawa is clear: preparations are underway, and Canadians should be watching their accounts closely. Direct deposit will be the primary method, with mailed checks available for those without electronic banking access. This story is more than a technical policy decision. It's a reflection of the growing struggle between rising costs and the promise of a secure life in Canada. It's about a single mother in Winnipeg who works 2 jobs yet still wonders how she'll buy winter clothing for her children. It's about a retired couple in Nova Scotia whose modest savings are being eaten away by monthly bills. And it's about the dignity of millions of Canadians who, in the wealth of this country, still find themselves forced to make impossible choices. The relief checks are not a miracle solution. They will not erase years of financial anxiety overnight. But they represent a message, that Canadians are being heard, and that in the halls of power, there is at least recognition of the pain so many are enduring. The real test will come not with the first deposit, but with the long-term commitment to protecting families, seniors, and vulnerable citizens in a shifting economic landscape. As this story continues to unfold, Canadians are watching closely. Will these payments deliver the promised relief? Will they mark the beginning of a more compassionate and responsive approach to social policy? Or will they be remembered as just another temporary bandage on a wound that keeps reopening? Today, one thing is certain: hope has returned, even if cautiously. For seniors opening envelopes with their OAS statements, for families staring at growing stacks of bills, for workers stretched thin by expenses they can no longer manage, this update is more than numbers and forms. It is a reminder that their struggles matter, that their voices carry weight, and that the promise of relief, however small, is finally within reach. And so, as Canadians wait for the first payments to arrive, a sense of anticipation fills the air. This is not just about money, it's about dignity, survival, and the belief that in a country built on fairness, no one should be left behind.